Where it all begins again. The WWE wanted to commemorate the first WrestleMania by bringing WrestleMania 20 to Madison Square Garden. It's a nice touch. WrestleMania 1 and 10 were held in the same arena, and since then WrestleMania grew into a much larger name, and the wrestlers each year always reminded you that being on the card was important. WWE in 2004 was in rebuild mode. Austin was kind of around. Rock was a part-timer without the part-timer boost. He was losing some matches, and while things weren't as big as they were in the past, there was nice stuff. The roster was still stacked as hell with the likes of Rob Van Dam, Booker T, Chris Jericho in the mid-card, Kurt Angle, Brock Lesnar, HBK on top, and while the star power on SmackDown side was slowly coming to an end, Brock wanted to go to the NFL, Kurt Angle was injured, Raw on the other side was rolling. Compared to 02-04, Raw of 04 to 05 is night and day. Things were moving at a fast pace, the main event matches weren't disappointing, and obviously there's some dumb stuff, but I can say that 04-05 Raw is one of the best years the Red Brand ever had. Youth movement on the other side was in full swing as well. This is a very important WrestleMania for John Cena, Batista, and Randy Orton. On SmackDown, Cena's being the kayfabe PR nightmare with his controversial raps, his disrespect towards authority, and on Raw, you had a confident young upstart who was desperate to prove that he is indeed that good. These three men, along with Edge, led WWE to a new era of sorts, but here, they were mid-carders. With that said, WrestleMania 20 was held in Madison Square Garden on March 14, 2004. 20,000 fans were in attendance to witness the horrendous Brock Lesnar and Goldberg match, and the buy rate was 1,020,000, which was significantly higher than WrestleMania 19's 560,000. The theme songs to the event were Touché by Godsmack and Step Up by Drowning Pool, which was also featured in NFL Street 2, and of course the Punisher movie, which I kinda liked. Don't dunk on me for that. Before the video starts, I'd like to give a mention to a couple of rumored matches from the show. These matches range from dream matches to rematches. One of the matches you heard about was Bret Hart versus Kurt Angle. Around the summer of 2003, Kurt Angle spoke well about the Hitman in interviews. He eventually challenged him for a match at WrestleMania 20, but unfortunately the Hitman was unable to wrestle and declined, citing his injuries in the past as the reason why. It's clear that Bret didn't want to be dragged and wanted to do some of the work himself. In other places, Austin and McMahon was considered. Why? Because it's the 20th WrestleMania. And then there's The Rock versus John Cena. Apparently this was pitched to the Gray One, but he declined in favor of Mick Foley in the Evolution match. So right now, let's get into it. Before the show started, the Boys Choir of Harlem performed America the Beautiful. An intro highlighted what WrestleMania is all about, and the wrestlers showed their passion and ambitions for the show, and it was great. It's definitely one of my favorite intros of WrestleMania. Some of the wrestlers were hanging out in Mankind's home, talking about how WrestleMania is everything, and it concluded with a shot of a new McMahon family member. The commentators for the event were JR, Jim Ross, and Jerry the King Lawler for Raw, Hugo Savinovich and Carlos Cabrera for the Spanish table, and Michael Cole and Taz for SmackDown. The first match on the show was for the WWE United States Championship. John Cena challenged Big Show for the gold. Great way to kick off this show. John Cena's stock was rapidly increasing at this point because SmackDown was getting light on the babyface side and allowed him to slot in and basically be the number 2 babyface before The Undertaker returned. This had to do with Chris Benoit's departure and the fact that Kurt Angle turned heel. Cena did a freestyle trashing the Big Show, saying he's a King Kong ripoff, saying he's itching to beat him like a penis with an STD. Hell, he even called him the hippo flow from the Macy's parade. Big Show didn't need to do no rap. All he did was use his hands, and his title reign was very forgettable. The whole time, the title was on his shoulders, it was never defended, and it was ridiculous. This was John Cena's first WrestleMania after the Sunday Night Heat fiasco, with him calling out Jay-Z and Fabulous. He even promised to main event WrestleMania 20, but that clearly wasn't the case. Early on, the challenger was desperate to take out the Giant. He had to use some deceitful tactics, and even then it wasn't enough to wear down the champion. It's weird to hear the entire crowd cheer for John Cena. 100%, they were rooting for him. Big Show overwhelmed him. Cena's writhing in pain, but this was only the beginning, at least in Big Show's mind. It wasn't letting John Cena rest at all. Once again, he has this little moment, but Big Show knocks him down with a boot. He was dishing it out, but this man refused to stay down. Then he went for the Cobra Clutch, and the fans thought it's time to motivate the champion. That was enough, and the Big Show was reeling. The champion was making more mistakes, and then from out of nowhere, Cena hit the FU. 1, 2, no. Because the Big Show kicked out, he brought in the steel chain. Ref confiscates it, and boom! Cena hits him with the knucks and hits the FU. 1, 2, 3, new champion. The match is very basic. Big Show never went down once until the FU, and it's not bad, but the action wasn't noteworthy. It's not a match you're gonna wanna watch, except for the moment itself. The moment, though, where Cena won the title was something special, and to this very day, people still talk about it. US title was used well here. They made a star out of John Cena. By the time he dropped it a year later, he was ready for the WWE title. Everybody has their memorable first title run, but John Cena's is near the top of the list for certain. It was a huge moment to see him beat the Big Show and become the champion. Backstage, the coach was asked by Eric Bischoff to look for The Undertaker. Man, the coach was always in some awkward situations. Meanwhile, Evolution stood in the same place where Mick Foley took a kick down the stairs. Randy Orton spoke about how it led to this point and how Foley was initially a coward and that he was perceived, because JR was even convinced to call him a coward at one point. I mean, if JR calls you a coward, it's almost factual because he's JR. Orton just wanted Mick to realize that Evolution has passed him by, but even then, he called Hollywood for help. He called The Rock. Despite this, Evolution saw it as a huge opportunity to prove that The Rock and Foley were washed up past their time. Nice promo. The IC title looked great on Orton's shoulder, and it also helped that they treated the title with respect at this point. The next match is for the World Tag Team Championships. La Resistance, Robert Conway and Rene Dupree, Garrison Kane and Mark Jindrak, and the Dudley Boys Devon and Bubba Ray Dudley challenged Rob Van Dam and Booker T for the gold. The champions had one of those early 2000s mashup songs that were forgettable. It'd be like, "Can you dig it? One of a kind," whatever the hell it is. Dupree and RVD started off. Van Dam exhibited the athleticism early on before Booker comes in. Booker T followed up and whooped La Resistance's ass. Time for Bubba. They had this nice exchange which led to interference from the others. Bubba broke a pinfall that was already kicked out of, so Jindrak told him to F off. Cade comes in and he doesn't really do much because Dupree's tagged in. Conway follows up and Booker's suffering. He's been in there since the beginning and was paying the price. Van Dam finally tags in and he's untouchable. Almost everybody took a beating except Devon, who took advantage of this. The match got messy. Everyone's hitting their moves. 1.5D from Devon, a DDT from Conway, and after Booker dropped him, RVD hits the 5-star frog splash. 1, 2, 3. The problem with this match is that even though it was 8 men, it felt like a regular tag team match at times. The pace should have been fast, tags in and out, chaos. If it were a normal tag match, it'd be kind of decent. But since there was 8 men, it's very underwhelming. Come to think about it, RVD and Booker T should have been in something bigger, but it is what it is. The coach caught Mean Gene and Bobby Heenan in on the act playing strip poker or something with Mae Young and the fabulous Moolah. Nan was horrified, and I bet if it came down to a beating from The Undertaker or this, he'd choose the former. The next match was between Chris Jericho and Christian, a friendship, a bond that was destroyed over a woman. So basically, the story came from Jericho and Christian bidding who could sleep with the woman first. Jericho had Trish and Christian had Lita. Chris Jericho was led far away from Christian to the point where his feelings and thoughts towards Trish far eclipsed that of Christian's. And he ended up clotheslining the hell out of her. So at this point, Trish was more than friends with Chris. Christian was an enemy, and Y2J was out for retribution. This was Christian's second singles match at WrestleMania and was definitely his most important up to this point. Chris Jericho had experience as a single star at WrestleMania, having main evented the show and even faced Shawn Michaels a year earlier. He was back to being a babyface after a while, and I always say this, but I felt this version of Jericho had potential. The bell rings and they engage in a rough collar and elbow tie-up. Both men were quite lenient and letting go. Why? Because this is what happened. Christian, though, was too aggressive and was sent to the outside. A beautiful springboard from Jericho and back in the ring. He was a step ahead of Captain Charisma, who was struggling to figure out a way to halt the momentum. That is until he dropped Jericho to the outside. This caused him to let out all that frustration and piss off the fans. He finally slowed down the pace, but this came at a price. Nonetheless, Christian isolated Jericho, and then from out of nowhere, both men bumped into each other. A slugfest ensues, which leads to the comeback from Y2J, running Insecurity 1, 2, no. Christian had his moment to steal it, but Chris fought through. Northern Lights leads to the Bulldog and was looking real bad for Captain Charisma. He avoided the Lion Saw, and I believe the match was in the final third now. Unprettier counter leads to a reverse tornado DDT from the top, yet Jericho kicked out. He caught Captain Charisma but took a backbreaker. They battle on the top and Christian wins this battle. Crossbody rollover and Jericho almost steals the match. Y2J's knee was proven to be a problem, so Christian took advantage. The Texas Cloverleaf was far too much, but with the fans by his side, he managed to counter into the walls of Jericho. Christian was so desperate to escape, but even though they were on the outside, he continued. A double underhook suplex from the top, and all of a sudden, Trish Stratus comes out. Both men in the ring trade strikes. Christian hits his super impaler DDT, but it wasn't enough. He drags Trish into the ring, and Jericho drops him with a clothesline. He goes to check on her, and she delivers an elbow. Christian takes advantage of the roll-up. 1, 2, 3. He finally shines when it matters most. Afterwards, Christian provokes Jericho and Trish delivers some random ass slaps. Jericho's confused, fans are shocked, and he takes an Unprettier. And to take it a step further, Christian drags her by the head, and they trade tongues. Damn good match. I thought I was lying to myself when watching it. I expected something nice, and I thought, this is going to be a great match, it's going to be this and that. But as time went on, it was exactly that match I had in my mind. Christian finally got him a singles victory, a singles moment on the biggest stage, and he needed the win more than Y2J. I will say that the road to getting there, though, was fun. Both men showed intensity and aggression, and it fit the feud well, also provided a twist to the story. Backstage, Mick Foley and The Rock have yet another entertaining segment. The Rock made everything about Mick Foley, talking about how it's his night and everybody knows it. He said that the Hamburglar and Grimace know it, the Superfly and Don Morocco know it, and most importantly, the people know it. He motivated the hell out of Foley, and man, was it electric. Rock is just once in a lifetime. He's a once in a lifetime talent, and we'll get to that soon. The next match was a tag team handicap match. Evolution, Ric Flair, Batista, and Randy Orton faced The Rock and Mick Foley. Damn, look at that leap. He leaped higher than a stack of world title rematches from 2007. The feud between Foley and Orton really was special. Randy Orton felt that he was all that. Even though he didn't have much experience, he thought he's the best of the best. One of the ways Orton established himself is by taking out legends. One of those legends was Mick Foley. It got to a point where Foley was lost and walked away, and this was even after Orton spat at him and others called him a coward. Nonetheless, he bounced back, but even that wasn't enough, so he called the Grey One. By this time period, both men were on great terms, and Foley was actually shocked that The Rock agreed to this. In the beginning, the babyfaces got rid of the heels, and once things settled down, it was the Nature Boy and the Grey One. Both men traded chops and strikes, but The Rock, though, had the edge. Back body drop on the outside, and Foley followed up with the elbow. Randy is tagged in, and he finally got his. Rock gave him a whooping, and Orton had this little moment, but other than that, it was all Rock. Even Flair and Batista took a strike. Orton had enough, and Batista enters the match. His power and strength was far too much initially for The Rock, so Flair decided to enter the match. His showmanship affected him, and it didn't help that he went to the top rope. Big Batista saw enough, but even then he took a clothesline. Foley's in. He was too intense, but Batista showed him what's up. Evolution got their hands on him, and once again, Foley was tossed into the steps. JR likened this beatdown to an episode of The Sopranos. The three men finally integrated properly into the match, and Foley was in trouble. He finally caught Batista with a mandible claw, but Orton comes in from out of nowhere. When that happens in WWE games, it's so frustrating. You got the finisher, but somebody ruins it. Compared to the others, it was Batista who was struggling with Foley, but at this point, it didn't matter. Rock enters the match, he lays the smacking down, but then Batista came in with a spine buster. So Flair thought it's time to go for the people's elbow. Rock just pops up and continues where he left off, and even finished the people's elbow that Flair desperately sought. Despite this, he kicked out. Orton enters, takes a Rock bottom, but Flair makes it safe. He's losing, and this allows Batista to drop the Rock with the Batista bomb. It still wasn't enough. Foley enters, he knocks down everyone before pulling out Mr. Sacco. Orton's like, F that sock and F you with an RKO. 1, 2, 3. Cool. I like this match. It delivered as I expected it to, and established Orton and Batista more so. Their stock increased a little after this match, with Orton soaring after Backlash. What I like most about this match is that they really wanted to prove to you that these are the guys of the future, especially Randy Orton. I love the showmanship, I love the action. It didn't drag at all. I was right. The Rock and Foley looked disappointed afterwards, especially The Rock as he was talking about how this is Foley's night and made everything about him. Unfortunately, this was The Rock's final match for 8 years, and nobody expected it to be. Rock was always featured on Raw. If he's gone, they show him in Hollywood at a premiere or whatnot, talking about how he's gonna star in Walking Tall, Be Cool, or whatever. And looking back, it's a shame. Numerous reports, and even Rock himself said that he was interested in doing more matches. How The Rock wanted to face Sting at WrestleMania 21. There's even a report that JBL and The Rock could have been a title match at the event, but his contract was not renewed, which was questionable. Otherwise, I think we would have seen The Rock versus John Cena a lot sooner, and maybe even The Rock and Shawn Michaels. You know, it's a shame how he left. They should have kept him down, but hey, it is what it is. The 2004 Hall of Fame class were introduced. Bobby the Brain Heenan, Tito Santana, Big John Studd represented by his son, Harley Race, P. Rose, Don Morocco, Triple H's dad, Greg the Hammer Valentine, Junkyard Dog represented by his daughter, Superstar Billy Graham, Sergeant Slaughter, and Jesse the Body Ventura. This was the first Hall of Fame class. It's not the first official class, but it's the first of the modern era, as we say. This was a stacked lineup. You know, it was very 80s because, well, it was 2004, and the rest was our wrestling in the 90s. We're still wrestling. A lot of colorful characters there. You know, Harley Race, Tito Santana, Bobby the Brain Heenan, Jesse the Body Ventura, Sergeant Slaughter. So that's cool. The next match is a Playboy evening gown match. Sable and Tori Wilson faced Miss Jackie and Stacy Keibler. Jackie's out here thinking she's Shawn Michaels stealing the show. Back in the 2000s, WWE had a partnership with Playboy. This led to a bunch of segments at the Playboy Mansion. Of course, every year a woman would feature on the cover during WrestleMania season. Sable, Chyna, and Tori Wilson featured on the cover. The partnership lasted until WWE went PG in 2008. Now, this wasn't no Girls Gone Wild show, but they showed off their attires. The commentary was something else, though. Taz apparently stabbed Cole with his pencil and was ready to take off his clothes. Oh, man. The crowd, too, was something else. The crowd was a little too thirsty as well, you know. The three women took off their clothes and were angry at Jackie. You have Tori, Stacy, and Sable. With Sable, you're probably scared of Brock Lesnar, but it's a different story with the others. As if she had a choice in the end. Tori hit this crossbody before Stacy started to tease everyone with the legs. Stacy and Tori traded pinfall attempts, and the crowd was happy at the sighting of a full moon, or full moons. The commentary wished they were the ref. Man was loving it, you know, he was getting WrestleMania paycheck and landing on the woman. Tori managed to win it, and the moment the match concluded, everything went quiet. Once again, this is a lesson. Pay-per-views in the 2000s were risky. If you're on DVD, all you had to do was skip a chapter, but purchasing a pay-per-view, that's a different story, unless you lived alone. About the match, let's say it was pleasing to a bunch's eyes. The commentary basically showed that a new thirsty type word needs to be created because they were far more than that during this match. Backstage, Eddie Guerrero cast some doubt, aka confidence in Chris Benoit. He fired him up and unlocked that Chris Benoit that could beat Triple H and Shawn Michaels. The next match was a Cruiserweight Classic for the WWE Cruiserweight Championship. Nunzio, Jamie Noble, Tajiri Akio Funaki, Shannon Moore, Ultimo Dragon, Billy Kidman, and Rey Mysterio challenged Chavo Guerrero. Ultimo Dragon tripped during his entrance, and this feud was initially Chavo and Rey. He lost the title to Chavo in an excellent match at No Way Out, and logically they'd have a rematch here, but it is what it is. Shannon Moore and Ultimo Dragon started off with some quick exchanges. Both men had an urgency to get something done, but it was Dragon who emerged victorious in this battle. Jamie Noble enters and he managed to tap out Dragon before quickly eliminating Funaki after a crossbody rollover. Nunzio didn't suffer the same fate, and instead Noble had to take to the skies. This led to Nunzio getting counted out, and he ended up attacking afterwards, so Kidman decided to die in the middle of the air. Just quit in the middle of the air. I don't know how he does it. Back in the ring, Noble failed to lock in the guillotine and took a BK bomb from the top rope. Rey Mysterio's in. Seated senton and off the ropes, he runs into a dropkick. Akio almost cost Mysterio, but even then he kicked out. Rey rebounded with a SOS off the top and Tajiri's in. He proved to be tough opposition, but Rey was in form. Akio apparently couldn't perform because of the mist, and so Chavo's in. Tajiri delivered a cheap shot and the champion was comfortable, but not for long though. Even Chavo Sr. took a beating, but unfortunately for Rey, being near the ropes cost him, and Chavo Guerrero retained the title. This was the most get your stuff in match. Some didn't even have time to do anything like Funaki and Akio. The way the match went hurt the quality. It should have been the Cruiserweight Invitational type match, or straight up have Chavo versus Rey. I think the latter would have been better. Too many guys didn't help. Plus Rey was dressed as Flash. He should have had more time to show off that gear and more time to construct a great match. The Cruiserweight title was never defended after this, which is not all that shocking because basically WWE didn't care about the division after Rey Mysterio left. 2004 was basically as good as it was going to get from here on. There were some moments, Gregory Helms. Well, other than that, there wasn't much with the Cruiserweight division. The next match was between Brock Lesnar and Goldberg with Stone Cold Steve Austin as a special guest referee. Oh man, a match considered to be a dream match. You have two explosive powerhouses who plowed through anyone in their way, be it a mid-carder, main eventer, and even Hulk Hogan. Can Stone Cold say that? No. That's enough drama as it is, Brock Lesnar and Goldberg. But then it's revealed that Goldberg was leaving after his contract expired. His contract ended after WrestleMania 20 and there was no sign of a renewal. So it was likely that Brock was going to destroy him. Then Brock Lesnar announces he's leaving. Why? It wasn't to go home or anything like that, but to go to the NFL. It sounds random, the man was the number one guy, but he wanted to go play football. It goes to show just how fed up he was. And because of these elements, and because WrestleMania was in what was known as a smart venue, these men got trashed. On paper, this was supposed to be a marquee match, but looking back, it doesn't feel like that at all. Both men were showing part-time energy before becoming part-timers. You sold out chants were loud and clear in Madison Square Garden. Apparently Shane McMahon joined in as well. They were serenading them with a goodbye song, and they did nothing for over a minute. I guess they were thinking like part-timers at the time. Fans resorted to chanting Austin, and at this point, they should have jumped. It would have been better than what we got. There was a collar and elbow tie-up, and this was tight. A little bit of nothing, and it was back to the tie-up. At this point in the WrestleMania 33 match, I assume Brock went through the barricade or something. There was no point of return here. They were still in the first parts of the match, and were wrestling like they were in an Iron Man match or something. You sold out chants again, and they finally do something. Goldberg tosses Lesnar into the ropes before going for that military press slam. As he's going for the spear, Lesnar moves out of the way. He goes for the suplex, and something's going on in the crowd. I believe it was a Macho Man and Hogan fight. This match sucks. Chant intensifies while Lesnar's just dishing out a slow beating. Goldberg finally starts fighting back, but at this point, they lost the fans. There was no winning them back at this point. They had this little window of opportunity in the beginning, but they just decided to stare at each other. He hits the spear. 1, 2, Lesnar kicks out. Goldberg and Austin argue, and at this point, there was a better chance of them hugging than the match being good. Lesnar hits the F5, Goldberg kicks out. He goes for a spear but runs into the post, leading to Goldberg's spear and the jackhammer. 1, 2, 3. Finally. The problem with this match was, for one, the fans gave them no chances, but other than that, it was really dull. This is what Brock and Goldberg had to offer at WrestleMania. They had 2 moments where they stood on the ring as if it was their first time wrestling, and I ain't talking about together. Then there was this instance where Lesnar had this hold locked in for so damn long, and it was terrible. Afterwards, Lesnar flipped off Austin and took a stunner. Goldberg decided to celebrate, but since he was 1, gullible, and 2, leaving, he took a stunner as well. So nobody benefited from the situation, and if you consider Austin to have benefited, he left a week later. Lesnar was initially supposed to win, but since McMahon was so pissed over his departure, Goldberg scored the win. It was entirely nothing, just like Goldberg's run in general. He had issues with the guys in the back and wasn't happy over receiving 0 bonuses. Or like, oh, we're paying you $1.5 million to wrestle. Why should we give you bonuses? He was angry. The week after he left, he gave out an interview. He trashed the company, talking about how he didn't like how things were, this and that. And it just wasn't a great run for him. It was memorable, but at the same time, it could have been something else. He was wrestling these 15-minute matches and that. And after he lost the world title, that was it. Lesnar, on the other hand, he was their guy. He was their #1 guy, and he just decided to leave. Things were crazy back then. Mr. McMahon came out and thanked everybody for making WrestleMania what it has become. The next match was the WWE Tag Team Championships. The world's greatest tag team, Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin, the APA, Bradshaw and Farouk, and the Basham brothers, Doug and Danny, challenged Rikishi and Scotty 2 Hotty for the titles. Right out of the gate, Shelton slapped the hell out of Bradshaw, and man started delivering a beating thinking he's backstage. The Bashams, though, put a stop to it. Scotty 2 Hotty and Charlie Haas enter, and Haas didn't do much to combat the champions and needed Shelton's help. Doug Basham ends up tagging in and Scotty was isolated. The Bashams and the world's greatest tag team was doing the work, but it was all for nothing as Rikishi enters the match. With his ass, he sent Shelton back to 2003 and gave Charlie Haas a stink face. The match started to pick up as Bradshaw found momentum, and he was sending the Bashams to the outside, giving them a clothesline from hell, but then Rikishi knocked him down and backed his ass on Danny Basham to retain the titles. Similar to the Raw match, this one was forgettable. There was, of course, something near the end, but other than that, it wasn't much. A vignette for Edge aired. It was expected for him to return on SmackDown, but he ended up coming back a week later on Raw. Jesse the Body Ventura interviewed Donald Trump and started talking about a wrestler in the White House in 2008. Little did he know. The next match was for the WWE Women's Championship. Molly Holly put up her hair to challenge Victoria for the title. Long story short, Molly was the longest reigning women's champion of the 2000s at this point. She loses the title, wants a rematch, but since Stone Cold was around, he wanted her to put something on the line, like her hair. She accepts. As expected, all the things she said is dubbed and they have very little time. Collar and elbow, Molly already gets aggressive. She goes after the arm for a bit before Victoria's athleticism allows her to escape. A little fan was telling Molly to get ready, which was funny. The King was asking if this was the first time Molly would get shaved. Perv. I thought the Cole and Tess were something earlier on. The King's out here talking about panties, and JR had to steer him back to the match. Victoria makes a comeback. Molly goes around nowhere, and someone hits a sunset flip, but she screws up by stealing the Widow's Peak, and Victoria goes for the backslide. 1, 2, 3. They didn't have much time, and the big story was that Molly is losing her hair. She made a run for it, Victoria fouls and almost pays the price, and manages to bounce back, and it's Molly who's stuck in the chair. The King called this a butcher job because of the terrible job Victoria was doing, and with that, Molly's hair was gone like her push. She was never the same afterwards, and to get to this moment in itself was something else. In an interview with Ring the Bell, Molly Holly spoke about the lengths it took for her to get this match. I was a champion and the writers told me that there was only room for one women's match at WrestleMania. They were going to do a pillow fight or a mud match, and I was really devastated and thought I gotta come up with something that makes them change their minds. So I put a bald cap on and had my photo taken. I made a booklet with a bunch of different storylines showing my head getting shaved, and I presented it to Stephanie McMahon and some of the writers and said, I'm willing to shave my head. Can I please be on WrestleMania? Sure enough, they came back to me a couple of days later and said, alright, we'll let you get your head shaved at WrestleMania. So there you have it. At the end of the day, her hair grew by the end of the year. It just showed how much WrestleMania meant to her. You know, to have a women's match at WrestleMania, not whatever they had earlier on. And it's easily one of the most memorable moments from WrestleMania 20. But on the other side, she was never pushed as hard as she was here. You know, Molly Holly was just ahead and making others look good after this. The next match is the WWE Championship. Kurt Angle challenged Eddie Guerrero for the gold. A story rooted in honor and integrity. Kurt Angle felt that Eddie Guerrero was not the right role model for everyone. Hell, he was a terrible leader for the company. So he turned heel. Angle was the perfect foil for the new champion. He was a threat and most importantly an amazing heel. Eddie was well loved at this point. This was a great way to start off his run. Eddie was donning the iconic Scarface shirt, probably his most iconic design, and both men went for the collar and elbow tie. Hammerlock leads to a front face lock. Eddie goes for the takedown and Angle follows up. The commentary felt that Eddie should not engage in mat wrestling with Angle. Sure, Eddie's good in that area, but Angle's success needs no mention. Side headlock from the challenger, and he transitions into a takedown, all while the crowd was split. Angle was a bit further, and both men were just clearly testing things. Shoulder knockdown from the champion, he's quickening the pace, and Angle goes to the outside. Eddie and Angle were like pit bulls. One man lifts, and the other is desperate to grab an arm or the head. This suited Angle. Eddie was all about the pace previously. He quickens it, and he has the advantage. That's how it was. With this slow pace, it benefited the challenger. So Eddie had to dig down deep. A knee from Angle, and he's back to work. Abdominal stretch, and it was rough for Latino Heat. He rolls over and connects with a suplex before finding himself in German suplex position. He wanted to hit one on the apron, and often I wonder, is that Angle's dream spot or something? Because he's tried it in multiple matches and failed. Eddie goes up top and connects with nobody. It didn't help that his midsection was hurting. So Angle smelled blood. Belly to belly overthrow, and Angle's in form. The man was dominant. He goes for another one and it was back to the bear hug. Eddie had to resort to eye rakes, and even then Angle completed his hat trick of overthrows. He wanted to top it from the top rope, but Eddie pushed him away and went all out with a frog splash. He screwed up and back to the midsection. Guerrero showed resiliency, and at this point Angle was going with strikes, and this motivated the champion to go for a comeback. Failed suplex and is back to the Germans. Angle's slam is countered into an arm drag, and this unlocks Latino heat. He completed a brace of suplexes, but Angle locked in the ankle lock. That wasn't to be, and instead he connected with an overthrow premium. At this point the straps were down. He went for the angle lock. Eddie found a way to counter into a roll-up once again, took a German suplex. The angle slam was once again countered into a tornado DDT this time, and Eddie connects with a frog splash. 1, 2, no. Fans boo because of this, and I gotta say, the match is in the final third now. Angle played possum, leading to the ankle lock. The champion's writhing in pain. Michael Cole's begging him to hang on, and Eddie managed to roll the champion to the outside. He decides to untie his boot, and Angle's ready to take advantage. He's caught. The title slowly coming Angle's way when he randomly pulls the boot. He's confused, and Eddie takes advantage with a roll-up and a foot on the rope. 1, 2, 3. Excellent match. The story was all about integrity, and the match was intensity and intelligence. Intelligence played into the ending. Both men have great matches in their sleep. Even then, some thought this was underwhelming. Do I think that? Well, do I think WrestleMania 31 was overrated? No. The thing is, Eddie was in form. Angle claims that during his WrestleMania 20 match with Eddie Guerrero, he broke his neck again. This was confirmed 2 days after WrestleMania, and it looked bad. According to sources backstage last night on Raw, former WWE champion Kurt Angle is experiencing numbness in his hands and will be undergoing tests to see what is causing it. Angle, who has been recovering from the new type of neck surgery that he had last year, will be out of action until they find out what exactly the problem is. With the condition of Angle's neck, doctors are always very cautious about his condition, as it is very important that it does not get worse. The next day, though, saw some huge news being revealed about Angle's status. The backstage attitude concerning Kurt Angle's recent numbness in his hands is not very optimistic. Many within the company expect that the test will reveal that he will need to undergo surgery on a surgically repaired neck. The situation is being taken very seriously, and as most understand, that if Angle does undergo surgery again, there's a good possibility that it will be career-ending, and Angle will be forced to retire. Several people backstage have said that Angle hasn't been his usual happy self backstage and is not in high spirits. The threat of his wrestling career being over has definitely taken its toll on him emotionally. Whether or not Angle chooses to retire remains to be seen. Luckily, all was good a while later, as Angle had surgery, and before he knew it, he was back to action. So it's cool that they delivered. They had the action, the crowd, and of course the atmosphere. The ending established Eddie as this very unique and intelligent babyface. I mean, how many babyfaces cheat to retain their title, and how many babyfaces fool their opponent like he did here? Not many. Now, once again, Eddie liked this match, but he didn't think it was as good as the fans thought. He did, however, take their word for it. For Angle, it was one of his best WrestleMania matches, and for Eddie, it was definitely his number one match at WrestleMania. It's easily his most iconic match. Like, when you think of Eddie Guerrero at WrestleMania, this is the match we think of. Angle, it's not even his best match at WrestleMania, which is crazy to think about. And they would continue feuding as time went on. You know, Angle became GM, and I hope we do a video on that eventually. And Eddie went on to feud with JBL. The next match was between Kane and The Undertaker. So The Undertaker was the American badass. This character had run its course, and it was time for the dead man to return. Kane was still in the monster run where he was unstoppable, but even he was overwhelmed by the constant teases from The Undertaker. Paul Bearer made his return and received a loud cheer, but that was nothing compared to the moment The Undertaker came out. It had been a very, very long time since the fans saw this version of him. Kane was like the 04 Lakers. He was done before the match even began. He refused to believe The Undertaker was here, but that certainly made him believe, though. Kane was overwhelmed, as was the referee, who ran out of there like he saw hell. Apron, leg drop, and back in the ring. Kane is taking a beating, but he manages to counter the last ride. The ref was running inside and outside the ring more than a mid-card heel, and Kane connects with a flying clothesline and trades strikes with the dead man. He grabs the arm, attempts old school, but Kane grabs him and manages to hit the choke slam. He finally resolved the issue. Kane was gonna beat his brother. At least that's what it looked like, because Taker sat up. And this was the moment he realized he was screwed. He hits that flying clothesline, choke slam, and it's time for the tombstone. 1, 2, 3. Not bad. I honestly didn't have much hopes for this one. Last time I watched it, I didn't really like it, but now it was way better than I expected. The Undertaker was once again established as this almost unstoppable dead biker, whatever the hell he was. It was cool. The visuals were amazing. The entrance The Undertaker did, iconic. Everything about it was memorable. The Undertaker was back, and it was something special. And the main event, Triple H defends the World Heavyweight Championship against Shawn Michaels and Chris Benoit in a triple threat match. It's time for that match. Chris Benoit in 2003 established himself as the guy to watch in 2004. Every time he challenged for the title, it seemed like he was winning. The fans got behind him here, and Benoit was a perfect guy to win the Rumble. He jumps ship to Raw, and Shawn Michaels has a problem. His ego gets in the way and he signs a contract that was intended for Benoit. That's a different story, but it leads to a triple threat match. The promo for the match itself was excellent, one of the best from that era. Triple H around here was starting to pick up after a very bad 2003. He was injured, not in shape, but here that's a different story. And it also helped that his opponents in 2004 were from Scott Steiner and Kevin Nash to Chris Benoit and Shelton Benjamin. Oh, he wasn't clean-shaven anymore, which was essentially a curse, and he donned the white boots in special matches such as this. So the bell rings and both challengers have an issue already. They wanted to beat up Triple H. Benoit almost locks in the crossface, but instead delivers some chops. Triple H goes to the outside and the challengers go at it. Northern Light suplex, and from out of nowhere, Triple H delivers a clothesline. To the outside, Benoit goes, and it's back to the game in HBK. You screwed Brett. Chance intensifies, the game goes to the knee. The original main event battle, and HBK ruins it like he ruined the original match, and back to DX. Not for long though, as Benoit re-enters the match. He shows off intensity and sends Shawn Michaels into the post. Snap suplex, and it's back to the chops. The game grabs him in Tree of Woe position and sends Michaels directly onto him. He gets his though, but it's not enough for the victory. Off the ropes, Michaels connects with a forearm before Benoit sprints and sends him to the outside. He goes for the German suplexes. The man was hard-headed. He refused to let go and completed the hat trick. He gets carried away, superplex from the top, and it gives Triple H the near fall. Both men attempted their finishers, and Triple H was desperately trying to escape, but he's caught. Shawn Michaels had to come in. But Michaels got his though with a hat trick of German suplexes. The headbutt almost gives Benoit the victory, but Michaels was still in it. There's the forearm, and it's back to DX. HBK goes for the comeback. He hits the elbow, and it's time to tune up the band, but the fans were anything but happy. Sweet chin music. 1, 2. Benoit drags the game out. He battles Shawn before catapulting him into the post, and he's bleeding. Benoit caught him and locked him in the crossface, and Michaels was basically tapping, but Triple H grabbed that arm. Somebody finally got a hold of the rabid Wolverine and dropped him through the announce table. This was his own doing, as DX teamed up to take him out. You know, he wanted to drop Triple H, he ends up paying the price. This is what HBK wanted, and it was time. Michaels overwhelmed Triple H here. He was going for strikes, a super Irish whip, and he was going all out. But then Triple H hit him with a pedigree. Both men were down. They were cut. They bled profusely, and it seemed like all was over, but Chris Benoit was here. He still had something left and locked Triple H in the sharpshooter. I think if you asked the crowd, they would have wanted this match to end here. For Triple H, this was hell. He was moving around like a fish on land, but it wasn't for too long as Shawn Michaels hit the sweet chin music. Even then, Benoit kicked out. He tries going for it again, but Benoit throws him out. Triple H catches him, and it looks like the match is over, but Benoit counters at the last moment. The crowd explodes. The game is caught, and even though he was slowly fading, the rope was near. All he had to do was pull his arm out, drag the rabid Wolverine with all his fiber being, but even then, Benoit dragged him to the middle of the ring. He's bleeding. He's spent, and he taps out. Fans go crazy, and wow, what a tremendous main event. It delivered from every area. Now, would a Triple H and Shawn Michaels match be good at the main event? Yes. Would a Triple H and Chris Benoit match deliver in the main event? Definitely. But the added element of the third man makes this, in my opinion, the greatest main event in WrestleMania history. The action flowed well. The man they were pushing looked so dominant. I mean, this man took so much damage, yet came back with that chop and the German suplexes up and down. HBK drops him. He's back with the German suplexes. They throw him through the announce table. He's back. He was treated like a big deal, and the others made him look great as well. They were selling his moves well, treating the crossface like it was the most threatening move they ever been locked in. There's not a single dull moment in here. I mean, it got to a point where HBK teamed up with a sworn enemy to take down this man just for a moment. I can't really explain why this is the best WrestleMania main event. You just have to watch it. The story, the action, and the atmosphere were all in display here. Triple H finally got a great WrestleMania match, a main event that wasn't ruined by interference, card positioning, or a controversial ending. Shawn Michaels did what he does best, and Chris Benoit, it was the single most iconic moment of his in-ring career. JR was close to dying on commentary, and he couldn't exaggerate how big of a moment this was. It was just that. This man went through so much to get here, and there was his best friend, Eddie Guerrero. It's a very touching moment. These two men bled together, cried together, and never in anybody's wildest dreams did they envision a moment where these two stood together as world champions in the main event of WrestleMania. Wow. Now, obviously, we gotta mention that this is somewhat tainted. I like to look at things from a 2004 perspective. You know, when we gotta think of that moment, everybody loved this guy. Everybody wanted him to win the title, and the moment itself, it's easily one of the greatest moments in WrestleMania history. Is it now? No. That's a different story. I don't have a hard time watching his matches, but there's always that thought. As time goes on, it gets a little weirder to watch Chris Benoit, especially in 2007. His matches in 2007 are very odd to watch. This one, it wasn't that much, but you always have that thought in the back of your mind. That's how it was for me. But yes, this is easily the greatest WrestleMania main event of all time for me. Overall, WrestleMania 20 was surprising for me. Now, I already liked this event, but it kind of grew on me. I thought it was a bit overrated, but I hadn't watched it in 8 years. So watching it now, I changed my opinion on it. Yes, it's a top 5 WrestleMania for me. It's one of my favorites of all time, easily. The problem with the show, though, the time, the length of it. It's 4.5 hours, and if they cut a few matches, it would have been amazing. The matches that should have been cut, those were the disappointing matches. Rock and Goldberg is another one. That match sucked. It looked like they were wasting time like it was a Champions League match or something. The opener was exciting to see John Cena win the title. Not the action itself, but it's cool to see Cena, rise up. You're seeing this young guy, he's becoming a star. Evolution versus the Rock and Sock Connection was great. I loved the showmanship in the match. You had these guys showing off, doing all that. It was cool. The tag matches are like, eh. But the show found form. Eddie Guerrero and Kurt Angle come in. They put on a classic. The Undertaker comes in. Everyone goes crazy. Then there's the main event. It's easily one of the best WrestleManias of all time. It grew on me after watching. I was like, this is that damn good. It actually delivered more than I expected it to, because I hadn't watched the matches in a while, but it was cool. Alright, what did you guys think of WrestleMania 20? Please comment down below, and that's it for this video. Make sure you hit the RKO on the like button, and perhaps the sweet chin music on the subscribe button. Peace, I'm out.